Hi everybody, it's Maureen Wong for YNS.com. Today I'm going to show you how I made this fun splattered rainbow card using YNS products and the new Ken Oliver Color Burst colors. So let's get started. Okay, so to start with, we have this set called YNS Rainbow Fun, and I'm going to be using this rainbow, and then also the sentiment, my wish for you is 100% pure outrageous joy, because I think that's just so, I don't know, it's just so sweet. And so I'm positioned my rainbow already how I want it on my Misty, and I've been trying out this archival ink. It says it's acid-free, permanent, and waterproof, and I'm going to be doing watercolor effects over it. So instead of using my normal VersaFine, I thought I'd try out this archival ink. So the first thing I notice about that is it does stain your stamps pretty well, but of course that doesn't affect how it works or anything, so it's fine. So I'm stamping my rainbow down. And I'm going to clean off that little bit of ink on my mat, and you can see that that is kind of stained in, so I'll have to use some cleaner on that later. But I'm not too worried about that right now. And then I'm going to take off this stamp, and then I'm going to position my sentiment, and to do that I'm going to use my positioning, my centering guide, and I'm putting this pretty much right underneath that rainbow, where the rainbow ends, and I'm centering it and trying to make sure it's straight, and there we go. And then I'm going to treat my paper with my anti-static powder bag, because I'm going to emboss this in white. And just so you know, I'm working on the textured side of the paper. It doesn't really matter. You could use the smooth side, but I just happen to have the texture side up. So that's what I'm using. And so I'm going to get my Versamark ink out and ink that up. And stamp it down. Okay, and you can see I used that stamp before and it had some ink left on it, so there's a little bit of ink underneath, but I'm using white powder, not clear, so it's gonna cover that up really nicely. You won't see that ink color underneath of the white embossing powder. Okay. And now I'm just going to heat that up with my heat tool. Okay, and you can see how that's kind of disappeared because the white is covering it up. Okay, that's just a little bit warped from the heat embossing. So what I'm going to do now is, because I'm going to be working with watercolors and water, I'm going to take my little board and I'm going to tape this down. And that is going to help because it's, I already said it's warped from the heat embossing. So I'm just going to tape that down on all four sides. And that should help a little bit with the warping. It's not going to correct it completely. It's still going to be a little bit bubbly in the center. But there you go. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is, here are my Ken Oliver color bursts, and I got all 6 colors that are available right now. That's lemon yellow, alizarin crimson, violet, ultramarine blue, orange, and phthalo green. And I know it's hard to be getting all the new stuff every time something comes out. So one thing I thought to make this just a little bit cheaper is I'm not using the orange and the green. So if you want to make a perfectly nice rainbow, you can get away with just having these 4 colors. And actually you don't even need the violet, because you could actually mix the yellow and blue to make your own violet. But you can't you know, shoot it straight out of the bottle. So I just like to have that violet on the end of my rainbow, so I'm using the violet also. But that saves you from having to buy 2 colors, so at least that's something. Okay, and I have this spritzer bottle, and it is full of just plain water. And by the way, you can see from my hands that the color bursts do stain your fingers a little bit, but I'm sure that'll come out with washing. But you know, this stuff kind of tends to get everywhere. So once you've been playing with it for a while, you have to be really careful to clean up your surfaces, clean your hands. Otherwise, at about my 2nd or 3rd try of this, I was getting fingerprints and color all over places where I didn't want it. So you want to be careful that you keep your area clean in between projects, because this stuff really gets everywhere. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this over, because I'm going to be spraying away from me. I want the water on the bottom of the paper, not really across the top. Excuse me. So that's why I sprayed it away from me. And you can see there's already a little bit of color coming out on that bottom edge. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is actually just leave that way. And so I'm taking the alizarin crimson, and I'm going to just pull out a little bit. And what you can do is you can either tap the bottle, you can squeeze it very slightly to get the color out. Some of them, they have a lot of powder in them already, so, or for some reason want to come out more so than other colors. So you just gotta tap it and a whole bunch of color will come out. And then some other ones you have to actually press on it for the color to come out. So I'm just squeezing them very, very lightly. You do a hard squeeze and you'll get just a ton of the powder coming out of the bottle. So very, very lightly. You may think there's nothing going on, but it's actually coming out. You can see I'm getting little sprays of purple there. Okay. And then now what I want to do is go over the top, and I'm holding my spritzer kind of far away, maybe about 6 inches away from the paper, so that I'm not right up against that paper. And then I'm going to spritz it a few more times. And you can see that the colors are mixing and blending, and it's a really neat effect. I really like how that looks, and I want to do just a little bit more on this red side. And what you can do at this point is let it dry. You can add more color. You can heat it with a heat tool. You can move the color around with your fingers or with a brush, or however you want to do it. These things are just really fun to get in there and play with them. What I'm going to do is hit it with my heat tool, and you can see that the pressure of the heat tool's air will kind of move that color around a little bit. I don't have a ton of water on here though, so it's not going to move around that much, but it's going to move around just a little bit. And I'm seeing as it's drying that it's kind of lightening a little bit. The colors are still pretty vibrant, but it's lightening just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is stop here. It's not completely dry, but I'm going to stop there. And I am going to spritz a little bit more water. And I see my blue is almost gone, so I'm going to get my blue out and puff a little bit more of my blue in there. There you can see how that looks. And then again, I want to come from the top and spritz just a little bit. The yellow is just about gone too, and this yellow doesn't seem to want to come out unless I press it really hard, so I have to be careful with that. But there we go. There's some yellow. And I'm actually not going to spray that out because I think it looks really good just like that. So now I'm going to get my heat gun again, and I'm trying not to move that water around too much because it's blending. Some of the red ran over to the blue side, and it is blending with the blue and making another shade of purple there. But you can see just how fun these are to play with, and it takes a little while to get used to how they react. You can either wet your paper first and then spritz or puff the color burst down into the wet paper, or you can put the color burst down on dry paper and spray some water into it, or you can do both as I did here. So there's really a lot of ways you can play with it and have fun. You can also just mix it with water and use it as a regular watercolor, which I've also done here. I just took this little 6-well plastic palette and I put a little bit of water in each well, and then I put a little bit of each of the color bursts in there, and then I can use this just like a watercolor. If I want to make washes or anything, this is really nice. If I don't want that sort of color burst, I think this is why it's called color burst, because it looks like little bursts of color. If you want something a little more subtle than that, then you might want to use it just as a watercolor paint. But that is pretty much my project. So I'm going to let this dry completely before I take off the blue masking tape. And I'm going to add some finishing touches. Okay, it's completely dry, and I took it off of the board. I took off the blue painter's tape, and you can see that because I taped all the way around my card, I got this kind of harsh line right across the bottom of my card. So what I'm going to do is just trim that off. And this is a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper, and so it's already cut to A2 size, but I'm going to want to mount it on something else, on a card base, and so I'm going to cut off a bunch of this. So what I'm going to do is cut just below that, or just above that line where the tape went, so that my bottom doesn't, I mean, it looks cut off now, but it looks more because I cut the paper and not because I had tape on it. And then I'm just going to go in and cut off a little bit of the edges. Okay, so there is a really neat color burst kind of rainbow. And then to finish it off, since the DT Dare is flowers, I'm going to be using this mini flower splatter stamp. And I already have it on my block, so it's got a little bit of lint on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with that archival ink, and I'm going to make just a slight bit of a black frame of flowers around the edges. I want this kind of looking like a little bit mixed media journaling piece, and a lot of times for mixed media pieces you put a frame around it, and so I'm framing this with black, and then I'm going to mount it on black, on a black cardstock base, so that this will all kind of tie in together. And I want to use different parts of the stamp so it doesn't just look like I stamped the same stamp over and over again, which is what I'm doing, but you don't want it to look like that. So use different sides of the stamp in different ways, and then you can get a varied border around your stamp. Okay, or around your image, I mean to say. And there, we're almost done. And just a little bit on the corner. Okay. And so there is my focal panel. And let me just clean up, and then I'll be back to finish off the card. Okay, I have a base of black Stampin' Up! Cardstock. This is the standard A2 size, and when I put my focal panel on it, it looks like I cut it a little uneven for this size. So what I'm going to do is just take my trimmer and trim off a little bit of that extra space on that side. And then that is more even all the way around, so that looks good. And then I'm just going to take my ATG gun, and I'm going to put a lot of adhesive on this because it is kind of warped from the watercoloring and the heat embossing, and so I want this to stick as flat as I can, so I put a bunch of adhesive down. And then I'm going to center this on my card. And then I'm going to press it down from the back, so I'm making sure I'm not smudging the front. And there you go. And you can see that the white resisted the color, and so you can still see the My Wish for You is 100% pure outrageous joy. So I hope you like this look at color bursts with the YNS products, and we hope to see you over at yournextstamp.com for these and many other fun stamps and dies and other products. Thank you very much for watching.